Hey, it is the Monday, Wednesday class. We're tackling chapter 5 today. Hey, what is today? Why in the world are we here?
To get the tools to build fearless champions.
Excellent. What chapter are we in?
5.
Hey, how'd you wake up this morning?
1 alarm, 2 feet on the ground, gratitude, 4 drinking water, make your bed.
Who hasn't made bed right now? The numbers are improving. I am digging that. Well done. So again, we are in chapter 5. Tuesday, Thursday class. Enjoy this. Lots of fun. We're going to go about 10 minutes, take a little break. We're going to get a few neat calories in here. We'll be back with you in the second half and third half and fourth quarter. Think about it like a basketball game. First quarter, second quarter, halftime, third quarter, fourth quarter, game over. That's how we're approaching today. So we start off in this chapter on page 88. What page?
88.
Very nice. Now, when we start to talk about chapter 5, if we go back, y'all remember the line? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You guys, every bit of this is chapter 5 on this side of the line. So everything with lactate thresholds, everything with hydrogen ion accumulation, everything with type 2, which ones are over here? Type 2X fibers, everything all the way down to what we call actually 2Cs, starting right here. And we're going to talk about the fiber spectrum today. So as we move through here, remember your foundation. Remember that you know all of these things about this. I'm going to ask you a series of questions from here that you're already going to know because we took such a long time meticulously building this before. So you're going to know more than you already think you know. So just soak it up and enjoy it. Okay, so again, we're talking about aerobic or anaerobic training. Anaerobic training, excellent. So when we start to see this, and I'm on page 88, kind of in that first full paragraph, we see that improvements in muscular strength, power, hypertrophy, some muscular endurance, even though you're working type 2 fibers, motor skills, coordination are all recognized as benefits of training in the anaerobic system. We see exercises such as sprints and plyometrics really tap into the phosphagen system. Hey, how long is the phosphagen system basically active? 0 to 6. So these are short, powerful bursts that really come over here with plyometrics, with sprints, and all of those things going on. Longer activities. Hey, if the phosphagen system was right here, what system came right here? Come on, dig deep in the vault. Starts with a G. Glycolytic. Or glycolysis, either way. This is when we start to see. You're still working at a high intensity or a low intensity?
High.
Still working at a high intensity. And that's where we are talking about with these things. We see adaptations. Moving on down here. Adaptations take place in your nervous system. Hello. Of all the systems to arrive on the scene first to create change, which one is it? Nervous system. We see changes in the muscular system. We see changes in the connective tissue, changes to the endocrine system, and changes to the cardiovascular system. Do you remember how we said as few as 2 exercise sessions a week can change the risk of type 2 diabetes, which then that changes the pancreas, and that makes the body more efficient and effective at handling excess carbohydrate intake and being better at delivering power when we need it to. So in that right-hand column, you actually see that anaerobic training has the potential to elicit long-term adaptations to the neuromuscular system. You've been hearing this now for 5 weeks. Which of the systems arrives on the scene first to make changes? The nervous system. And when we think about those central adaptations, you guys, changes in motor unit takes place in your higher brain centers. So your brain is sending these messages about, hey, you're about to go over and pick up that thing that's really heavy. So your brain sends that signal first. Your muscles aren't saying, hey, go pick that up. Your brain has to send it to make it happen without a doubt. So here's where we see, whenever the nervous system is at play, we actually see that maximal levels of force and power cause the motor cortex activity to go through the ceiling. So it's the motor cortex units that actually send those messages from the top of the head to that beautiful brain that you have. Hey, random question. I love random questions. Y'all should know that about me now. Of your brain's potential, how much are you truly using on a day-to-day basis? We're using about 20% of our brain's potential every day. So there's that 80% that's just kind of hanging out saying, hey, use me, use me, use me, I'm here. You want to know another interesting, random, sad thought? Do you realize that 80% of the thoughts you thought yesterday are the same 80% of the thoughts you're going to think again today? You're in thought prison unless you intentionally try to think a new thought. So, with our MSAT folks going through Graston stuff, going through different things, we need to be hungry to learn new information, to keep our cortex and our nervous system wanting to do more and wanting to learn more. How many of you remember the first time you learned a new motor skill? Anyone? Flashback 7th grade when you were trying to learn how to do a layup. Oh, all of a sudden they're giving you these cues, like pretend there's a string tied to your elbow and your knee. Yes or no? You've heard that? And all of a sudden you're trying to find the box. You're like, step on the box, take another step, make the layup happen. And instead of that being a fluid motion, your nervous system had to learn how to create those pathways. How many of you remember the first time you tried to learn how to do a power clean and it was ugly? Anybody remember? It's an ugly thing unless you learn to do it right. The first time I teach people how to squat, they go like this. I'm like, man, I just really am not feeling much work in my legs. And I'm like, how's your back feeling? Well, it's really hurting. So I'm like, let's talk about this as we teach the nervous system to make those changes. Now, the nervous system makes changes over here in type 1 fibers as well, but it's really sensitive to making them in the anaerobic type 2 phase as well. These fibers, because they're so quick, they want to change. They want to be in an influx of change, adapting, moving, growing, and all of those things. Now, there's a fabulous chart on page 89 in your book. Okay? On page 89 in your book. And what I want you to see is these first two columns. Okay? These first two columns are basically a summation of everything type 2, anaerobic. Now, over here in this far right-hand column, and it even says that, aerobic, okay? This is a great summation of everything going on in chapter 6, which I know y'all already watched part of the video for chapter 6. We are going to have a brief decompression day on chapter 6. But whenever you think about these things, and you think about, for example, let's go to powerlifting. Doesn't it make sense that if I'm powerlifting, my phosphagen system is going to be rocking out, my glycolytic system is going to be involved, but my aerobic system, not involved at all. So if you want to really think about, and on your last opportunity to show off everything you know, you guys, I'm going to ask you some of these things. But friends, you should not have to memorize this. This should almost be to a point where when I say rugby, you're like, man, that's going to be pretty high phosphagen. It's going to be right here in fast glycolysis, and phosphagen system. So you're going to learn these things. So spend some time learning this chart and talking about it. Now, one of the things that we need to talk about is that there's this function in the neuromuscular system that's called the motor unit. Now flip over to the next page. You have seen this page before. This was one of those diagrams that was actually in chapter 1, where it actually talks about the brain funneling down and then going into the belly of the muscle, and then we actually see, hey, you know this, what is that space called in between the motor unit and where it plugs into the muscle? Neuromuscular junction. You already know that. So here are these things. Again, I'm telling you, so many of these things should make sense to you now when you put these pieces together. One more thing in the first quarter. I want you to actually soak in the interesting things in table 5.1 on page 90. Now, what you're going to see is whenever you do type 2 training, friends, what do you think is going to happen to your muscular strength? Is it going to increase or decrease? It's going to increase. What do you think? Now, let me ask you this. What's going to happen to your sprint speed? It's going to increase. What do you think? Now, here's, what kind of people are you? Okay. Now, flash back to maybe in the video of chapter 6 when we talked about capillary density. We see type 1 fibers having more capillary density because there's more mitochondria, because there's more oxygen. Excellent. So whenever we have that more oxygen, that's more aerobic based. So when it talks about mitochondrial density, we actually see mitochondrial density decrease when we're talking about chapter 5. So I'm going to really need for you to spend some time making some sense with this. Now, here's, if you're ever having a hard time selling Fab 5 to anyone, let me tell you, you go to the last 2 entries in here and you say, do you want your percentage body fat to decrease? And do you want your fat-free mass or your lean body mass to increase? Most people are going to say, yes, sign me up. And what's the answer to that? Fab 5 training. This is why we have to get people off of the treadmill and into the weight room if they really want to increase their lean muscle mass and decrease their fat mass. Okay? Taking a pause. We're grouping here. We're going to stand up, move around a minute. We'll be back for the second quarter. Nice.